The dust kicked up from Sheriff Morrison's boots as he walked down Main Street, his spurs clicking against the wooden boardwalk. Millbrook was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business, and today, that business was all about one man sitting in the jail cell at the end of the street. The hanging was scheduled for tomorrow at noon, and the whole town was buzzing with nervous energy. Marcus Wilder sat on the hard wooden bench in his cell, staring at the wall opposite him. He'd been there for 3 weeks now, ever since they'd arrested him for the murder of Samuel Hartwell, the town's most respected banker. The evidence against him was damning. His knife found at the scene, witnesses who'd seen him arguing with Hartwell just hours before the murder, and his own inability to provide an alibi for that night. "Still claiming you're innocent, Wilder?" Sheriff Morrison asked as he approached the cell, carrying a tray with what passed for dinner in the Millbrook jail. Marcus looked up with tired eyes. He was a tall man, lean from years of working cattle ranches, with dark hair that had grown longer during his time in captivity. His face, once quick to smile, now carried the weight of a man who knew he was about to die for something he didn't do. "I've told you 100 times, Sheriff. I didn't kill Sam Hartwell. Someone's setting me up, and you know it." Morrison slid the tray through the slot in the cell door. "The jury didn't see it that way. Judge Hamilton neither. You've got one more night to make peace with your maker." As Morrison walked away, Marcus pushed the tray aside. He'd lost his appetite weeks ago. Instead, he moved to the small window that looked out onto Main Street. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Tomorrow, he wouldn't see another sunset. Down the street, the sound of a piano drifted from the Silver Dollar Saloon. Life in Millbrook was continuing as if nothing unusual was happening. As if a man's life wasn't about to end based on lies and false evidence. Marcus thought about Elena Vasquez, the woman who'd been visiting him almost every day since his arrest. She was new to Millbrook, having arrived just 2 months before the murder. She worked as a seamstress, renting a small room above Peterson's general store, and had quickly become known for her kindness and her stunning beauty. Her long black hair and deep brown eyes had caught the attention of every unmarried man in town, but she kept to herself mostly. What puzzled Marcus was why she cared about his fate. They'd barely spoken before his arrest, just polite greetings when they'd pass on the street. Yet she'd been his only regular visitor, bringing him books to read and sometimes just sitting quietly while he talked about his life, his regrets, and his fears. "She's wasting her time," he'd told Sheriff Morrison once. "A woman like that shouldn't be concerning herself with a condemned man." Morrison had just shrugged. Maybe she sees something the rest of us don't. The truth was, Marcus had been hoping Elena would stop coming. Each visit made tomorrow's execution harder to face. He'd started to care about what she thought, started to look forward to her visits, and that was dangerous for a man with no future. As darkness settled over Millbrook, Marcus heard footsteps approaching his cell. He turned, expecting to see Morrison, but instead found Elena standing in the shadows beyond the bars. She wore a dark blue dress that made her skin look like porcelain in the lamplight. "Elena," Marcus said, standing and moving to the cell door, "you shouldn't be here this late. People will talk." "Let them talk," she said quietly. "I needed to see you before tomorrow." Marcus gripped the cold iron bars. "Why, Elena? Why do you keep coming here? You don't owe me anything. We barely know each other." Elena stepped closer to the bars, close enough that Marcus could smell the faint scent of lavender in her hair. "Because I know you didn't kill Sam Hartwell." "How can you be so sure? Even I'm starting to doubt myself sometimes." Elena's eyes met his through the bars. "Because I know who really did it." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "What did you say?" "I said I know who killed Sam Hartwell, and I know why they're letting you hang for it. Elena, if you know something, you have to tell Sheriff Morrison. You have to tell someone." Elena shook her head. Morrison won't listen to me. Neither will Judge Hamilton or anyone else in this town. They've made up their minds, and they want this over with. Then why are you telling me? What good does it do if I'm going to die anyway? Elena reached through the bars and took his hands in hers. Her touch was warm and soft, and Marcus realized it was the first gentle human contact he'd had since his arrest. Because you deserve to know the truth, she said. Sam Hartwell wasn't the honest banker everyone thought he was. He was stealing money from people's accounts, small amounts that wouldn't be noticed right away. He was also involved with some very dangerous people from the territorial capital. Marcus stared at her. How do you know all this? Because I came to Millbrook to expose him. My brother Diego was one of his victims. Sam stole his life savings, money Diego needed for medicine. Diego died because he couldn't afford treatment. I've been tracking Sam's crimes for months. But if you were investigating him, then you must have evidence. You could clear my name. Elena's expression grew sad. The evidence was in Sam's safe. Whoever killed him cleaned it out. They took everything that could implicate the real criminals. Who? Who killed him, Elena? Deputy Carter Williams. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Carter Williams was Morrison's right-hand man, the deputy who'd found Marcus's knife at the crime scene. He was also the man who'd arrested Marcus and testified against him at the trial. Carter? But why would he kill Sam? Because Sam was going to confess. I'd been pressuring him for weeks, threatening to expose his crimes. He finally agreed to come clean and return the money he'd stolen. Carter couldn't let that happen because he was Sam's partner. He'd been helping Sam steal from the accounts in exchange for a cut of the profits. Marcus's mind was racing. The knife. My knife. Carter must have taken it from my saddlebags when I was staying at the hotel. But why frame me specifically? Because you were convenient. A drifter with no family, no important connections. Someone the town wouldn't miss. Elena. You have to find a way to prove this. There has to be evidence somewhere. I've been trying, Marcus. I've searched everywhere I can think of. Carter's too smart, and he's had weeks to cover his tracks. Marcus gripped her hands tighter. Then get out of town. If Carter knows you're investigating, you're in danger. I can't leave. Not while you're going to die for something you didn't do. Elena, listen to me. My life is over. There's nothing you can do to change that now, but if you stay here and keep digging, Carter will kill you too. Elena pulled her hands free and stepped back from the cell. There might be one way to save you. What do you mean? Carter's been trying to court me since I arrived in town. He thinks I'm interested in him. If I can get him to trust me, maybe I can get him to admit what he did. Marcus felt a surge of panic. Absolutely not. That's too dangerous. If he suspects you know anything, he'll kill you. It's the only chance we have. Elena, promise me you won't do anything foolish. Promise me you'll leave town after tomorrow and never look back. Instead of answering, Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather journal. This was Diego's. He wrote down everything about his dealings with Sam Hartwell. It's not enough to prove anything, but it shows Sam's pattern of theft. I want you to have it. She passed the journal through the bars, and Marcus took it with trembling hands. Elena, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just know that someone believes in you. Know that your life mattered to someone. As Elena turned to leave, Marcus called after her. Elena, wait. She stopped and looked back at him. Why? Why do you care so much about a stranger? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I've seen what happens when good men are destroyed by evil ones. Because I've seen what the world looks like when justice fails. And because maybe, just maybe, if I can save one innocent life, Diego's death won't have been completely meaningless. After Elena left, Marcus sat on his bench and opened Diego's journal by the light of the oil lamp. The pages were filled with careful handwriting, documenting deposits made and money that had mysteriously disappeared from Diego Vasquez's account. There were dates, amounts, and detailed descriptions of his conversations with Sam Hartwell. As Marcus read, he began to understand the scope of Sam's crimes. It wasn't just Diego who'd been victimized. There were references to at least a dozen other people, all small-time depositors who wouldn't be able to fight back against a respected banker. One entry, dated just 3 days before Sam's murder, caught Marcus's attention. Spoke with S.H. today. He seems genuinely remorseful and promises to make things right. Says he's going to confess everything to Sheriff Morrison and pay back every cent he stole. I told him it was too late for Diego, but maybe he can prevent others from suffering the same fate. Marcus closed the journal and leaned back against the cold stone wall. Elena was right. Sam Hartwell had been planning to confess. And if Carter Williams was his partner in crime, that confession would have destroyed Carter too. But knowing the truth didn't change Marcus's situation. In 12 hours, he would walk to the gallows and hang for a crime he didn't commit. The evidence that could save him was gone, and the only witness who could testify to his innocence was a woman whose word would never be believed over that of a deputy sheriff. Marcus thought about Elena's plan to get close to Carter Williams. The idea terrified him. Carter was a dangerous man, and if he suspected Elena knew anything about the real crime, he wouldn't hesitate to kill her. As the night wore on, Marcus found himself pacing his small cell. He thought about his life, about the choices that had led him to this moment. He'd been a cowboy, a ranch hand, sometimes a sheriff's deputy in small towns that needed temporary help. He'd never married, never had children, never put down roots anywhere. Maybe that's why Carter had chosen him as a scapegoat. Marcus Wilder was a man with no past and no future, someone who could disappear without leaving much of a hole in the world. But Elena had changed that. For the first time in his life, someone cared whether he lived or died. Someone believed in his innocence and was willing to fight for it. The thought both warmed his heart and broke it at the same time. As dawn approached, Marcus heard the sound of hammering from the town square. They were building the gallows platform, testing the rope, preparing for the show that would begin in just a few hours. The sound echoed through the empty streets like a death knell. Sheriff Morrison appeared at his cell door carrying a breakfast tray and a set of clean clothes. "Time to get ready, Wilder." Marcus looked at the clothes, a white shirt, black pants, and a string tie, his burial outfit provided by the town's undertaker. "Any last requests?" Morrison asked. Marcus thought for a moment. "I'd like to see Elena Vasquez one more time, just to say goodbye." Morrison nodded. "I'll see what I can do." As Marcus changed into the clean clothes, he tucked Diego's journal inside his shirt, close to his heart. If he was going to die, he wanted to die carrying the truth with him. An hour later, Morrison returned with Elena. She looked pale and tired, as if she hadn't slept all night. She was wearing a black dress, and Marcus realized she was already in mourning for him. "5 minutes," Morrison said, then walked away to give them privacy. Elena approached the cell slowly, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I tried everything I could think of. I even went to Judge Hamilton's house at dawn, but he wouldn't listen to me." "I know you did," Marcus said gently. "You did more than anyone else would have done." "It's not enough. It's not fair." Marcus reached through the bars and touched her face, wiping away a tear with his thumb. "Elena, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't try anything dangerous with Carter Williams. Promise me you'll leave Millbrook and never come back." Elena caught his hand and pressed it against her cheek. "I can't promise that." "Elena, please. Your life is worth more than revenge." "This isn't about revenge. It's about justice." Marcus pulled his hand back and gripped the bars. There's no justice in this world, Elena. There's just survival. And I want you to survive. Time's up, Morrison called from down the hall. Elena stepped closer to the cell, so close that Marcus could feel her breath on his face through the bars. Marcus, there's something I need to tell you. What is it? I love you. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Elena, don't. I know it sounds crazy. I know we've only known each other for a few weeks. But I love you, and I need you to know that before. She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus reached through the bars and took her face in his hands. I love you too, he whispered. God help me. I love you too. Morrison's footsteps were approaching. Elena stood on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to Marcus's through the bars. The kiss was desperate and sweet and heartbreaking all at once. When they separated, Elena stepped back with tears streaming down her face. This isn't over, she whispered. Yes, it is, Marcus said firmly. Promise me, Elena. Promise me you'll let this go. But Elena was already walking away, and she didn't look back. The church bell tower chimed 11 times as crowds began gathering in the town square. Word had spread through Millbrook like wildfire that the hanging was set for noon, and people were coming from miles around to witness the execution. Some brought their children, treating it like a public holiday. Others came with grim faces, duty-bound to see justice served. Elena stood at her window above Peterson's general store, watching the crowd below. Her hands trembled as she fastened the buttons on her dark green dress, the finest one she owned. She had brushed her hair until it shone and pinned it back with a silver comb that had belonged to her mother. If today was going to be her last day in Millbrook, she intended to look her best. Deputy Carter Williams stood near the gallows platform, checking the rope for the third time. He was a handsome man in his early 30s, with blonde hair and blue eyes that seemed to charm every woman in town. His uniform was pressed and clean, his badge polished to a shine. To everyone watching, he looked like the picture of law and order, but Elena could see something else in his posture, something only she would notice. Carter was nervous. His eyes kept darting through the crowd as if he was looking for someone specific. His hand rested on his gun holster, and every few minutes he would check his pocket watch. At 11:30, Sheriff Morrison appeared at the jailhouse door with Marcus between them. Marcus wore the white shirt and black pants the town had provided, and his hands were bound behind his back with rope. His face was calm, but Elena could see the tightness around his eyes. He was afraid, but he was trying not to show it. The crowd parted as Morrison led Marcus toward the gallows. Some people jeered and called out insults. Others watched in respectful silence. A few children pointed and asked their parents what was happening. Elena took a deep breath and made her way downstairs. Mrs. Peterson looked up from behind the store counter as Elena walked toward the door. "You're not going out there, are you, dear?" Mrs. Peterson asked. "It's no place for a lady." "I have something I need to do," Elena replied. "Well, you be careful. Crowds like this can get ugly." Elena nodded and stepped out onto the boardwalk. The noise from the crowd was overwhelming. Dozens of conversations happening at once, the sound of horses and wagons, children crying, and men arguing over betting odds on how long it would take Marcus to die. She moved through the crowd carefully, staying near the edges where she could see but wouldn't be easily noticed. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone around her could hear it. At the gallows platform, Reverend Matthews was setting up a small podium where he would offer Marcus a final prayer. Judge Hamilton sat in a wooden chair that had been brought from his office, looking official and solemn. Mayor Thornton stood nearby, checking his own pocket watch and nodding to important visitors who had come from other towns. Marcus climbed the steps to the platform with steady legs. When he reached the top, he turned to face the crowd. Elena could see him scanning the faces below, and for a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Marcus gave her the slightest shake of his head, as if to say, "Don't do anything foolish." Sheriff Morrison stepped forward to read the charges and the sentence. His voice carried clearly across the square as he recited the legal language that condemned Marcus to death for the murder of Samuel Heartwell. "Does the condemned man have any last words?" Morrison asked. Marcus stepped forward slightly. When he spoke, his voice was strong and clear. "I stand here today an innocent man. I did not kill Sam Heartwell, and someday the truth will come out. When it does, I hope the people of Millbrook will remember that justice failed here today." Some people in the crowd booed, but others fell silent. There was something in Marcus's voice, a quiet dignity that made even his harshest critics pause. Carter Williams stepped forward with the black hood that would cover Marcus's head. As he approached, Elena saw him whisper something in Marcus's ear. Marcus's face went white, and for the first time since leaving the jail, his composure cracked slightly. Elena didn't know what Carter had said, but she could guess. Probably some threat against her, some promise that she would be next if she caused any trouble. Reverend Matthews offered a brief prayer, his words mostly lost in the wind and crowd noise. Then it was time. Carter fitted the noose around Marcus's neck while Morrison checked the mechanism that would drop the platform floor. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together to keep them still. This was the moment. If she was going to act, it had to be now. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring the angry complaints of people she shoved aside. When she reached the front edge of the gathered townspeople, she took one last deep breath and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Stop! This man is innocent!" The crowd immediately fell silent. Every eye turned toward Elena as she stepped into the open space between the audience and the gallows platform. Sheriff Morrison held up his hand to halt the execution. "Miss Vasquez," Morrison called down, "you need to step back. This is no place for you." "I have evidence that proves Marcus Wilder is innocent," Elena called back, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. Judge Hamilton leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of evidence?" Elena reached into her bag and pulled out Diego's journal. "Proof that Sam Heartwell was stealing money from his depositors. Proof that he was planning to confess his crimes. And proof that someone killed him to stop that confession." A murmur went through the crowd. Several people pushed closer to hear better. Elena saw Carter Williams's face go pale, and his hand moved instinctively toward his gun. "That journal doesn't prove anything about who killed Sam Heartwell," Judge Hamilton said. "We've already had a trial, Miss Vasquez. Justice has been served." "No," Elena said firmly. "Justice has been perverted. The real killer is standing on that platform right now." She pointed directly at Carter Williams. "Deputy Williams killed Sam Heartwell to prevent him from confessing to their partnership in theft." The crowd erupted in shocked voices. Carter stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "That's a serious accusation, miss. You better be able to prove it." "I can," Elena said. She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "This contains 3 gold coins that Sam Heartwell paid to my brother Diego Vasquez just days before he was murdered. Diego wrote down the serial numbers of those coins in his journal. Those same coins are currently in your personal safe, Deputy Williams." Carter's hand moved to his gun. "How would you know what's in my personal safe?" Elena smiled, and there was something dangerous in her expression. "Because I broke into your house last night and found them." The crowd gasped. Carter drew his gun. But before he could aim it at Elena, Sheriff Morrison grabbed his arm. "Hold on, Carter, let's hear her out." "She's lying," Carter said desperately. "She's making all of this up to save her lover." "Then you won't mind if we search your house," Elena said calmly. "You won't mind if we examine those coins and compare them to the numbers in Diego's journal?" Judge Hamilton stood up from his chair. "Sheriff Morrison, I think we need to postpone this execution until we can investigate these claims properly." "No!" Carter shouted. He yanked his arm free from Morrison's grip and pointed his gun at Elena. "This woman is a liar and a thief. She admits she broke into my house. Arrest her! Lower your weapon, deputy, Morrison ordered. I won't let her destroy everything with her lies, Carter said. His voice was getting higher and more desperate. Wilder killed Sam Hartwell. We have proof. We have witnesses. Elena took a step closer to the platform, even though Carter's gun was aimed directly at her. Tell them about the night you took Marcus's knife from his saddlebags, Carter. Tell them how you used it to kill Sam when he refused to continue stealing for you. Shut up, Carter screamed. Tell them how you cleaned out Sam's safe after you killed him, taking all the evidence of your crimes. Carter's hand was shaking now. Sweat was running down his face despite the cool October air. I said, shut up! Sheriff Morrison drew his own gun and pointed it at his deputy. Carter, put the gun down now. You don't understand, Carter pleaded, looking wildly between Morrison and the crowd. She's lying. She's making all of this up. Elena pulled something else from her bag, a small silver letter opener with the initials CW engraved on the handle. I also found this in your house, Carter. It has blood on it. Sam Hartwell's blood. The crowd began to murmur angrily. Several men started pushing toward the platform, their faces dark with rage. Carter saw the mood of the crowd shifting and knew his situation was hopeless. His eyes darted toward the edge of town, calculating whether he could make a run for it. But there were too many people, and Morrison still had a gun trained on him. In desperation, Carter swung his pistol toward Marcus, who was still standing on the gallows with the noose around his neck. If I'm going down, I'm taking him with me. But before Carter could pull the trigger, Elena did something that shocked everyone in the town square. She climbed up onto the gallows platform and threw herself between Carter's gun and Marcus. If you want to kill him, she said quietly, you'll have to kill me first. Carter stared at her in disbelief. Get out of the way, Elena. No, I don't want to hurt you, but I will if I have to. Elena stepped closer to Carter, close enough to touch his gun barrel. I know you will. You killed my brother as surely as if you'd shot him yourself. You stole his money and let him die when he couldn't afford medicine. So go ahead, Carter, add another murder to your list. For a long moment, the entire town square was silent, except for the sound of wind whistling through the gallows rope. Carter's hand was trembling violently now, and Elena could see the sweat pouring down his face. I never meant for anyone to get hurt, Carter whispered. It started small, just a few dollars here and there that wouldn't be missed. But Sam got greedy, and then he got scared. So you killed him, Elena said softly. He was going to ruin everything. He was going to tell Morrison, and I would have lost my job, my reputation, everything. And you let an innocent man take the blame. Carter looked over at Marcus, who was watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. I'm sorry, Carter whispered. I'm so sorry. Elena reached out slowly and took the gun from Carter's trembling hand. He didn't resist. As soon as the weapon was out of his grip, Sheriff Morrison stepped forward and placed Carter under arrest. The crowd erupted in cheers and angry shouts. Some people were calling for Carter to be hanged immediately. Others were demanding answers about how the justice system had failed so badly. Elena turned to Marcus, who was still standing there with the noose around his neck, looking stunned by the rapid turn of events. She reached up and carefully removed the rope from his neck, then untied the bonds around his wrists. As soon as Marcus's hands were free, he pulled Elena into his arms. The crowd fell silent again as they watched the two figures on the gallows platform, holding each other as if they would never let go. Then Marcus did something that surprised everyone, including Elena. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her passionately, right there in front of the entire town. It was not a gentle kiss or a grateful one. It was the kiss of a man who had just been given back his life and wanted to share it with the woman who had saved him. The silence that followed was complete and profound. Even the children stopped talking, Even the horses stopped pawing the ground. It was as if the entire town had collectively held its breath. When Marcus and Elena finally separated, Elena looked out over the silent crowd and realized something had changed. The anger and bloodlust that had filled the air just minutes ago was gone, replaced by something else. Shame, maybe. Or wonder. Or the simple recognition that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Judge Hamilton was the first to speak. "Sheriff Morrison, please release Mr. Wilder immediately and see that Deputy Williams is properly secured." Morrison nodded and began removing Marcus's leg shackles. "I'm sorry, Wilder. We made a terrible mistake." Marcus looked around at the crowd of people who had come to watch him die. "We all make mistakes, Sheriff. What matters is how we fix them." Dr. Patterson, the town physician, pushed through the crowd and climbed onto the platform. "Miss Vasquez, you mentioned that your brother died because he couldn't afford medicine. What kind of medicine?" "Heart medicine," Elena replied. "Diego had a weak heart, and there was a treatment available in the territorial capital. But it was expensive, and Sam Hartwell had stolen all of Diego's savings." Dr. Patterson nodded grimly. "I remember now. A man came to see me about 2 months ago, asking about heart treatments. I told him about the medicine in the capital, but he said he couldn't afford it." "That was your brother?" "Yes." Dr. Patterson removed his hat and held it against his chest. "I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Vasquez, and I'm sorry we didn't listen to you sooner." Mayor Thornton stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Vasquez, the town of Millbrook owes you a tremendous debt. Is there anything we can do to make amends?" Elena looked around at the faces in the crowd, some ashamed, some grateful, some still suspicious. "You can start by returning the money that Sam Hartwell stole. His victims deserve compensation." "Of course," the mayor agreed quickly. "We'll establish a fund immediately. And you can make sure that something like this never happens again. Don't be so quick to believe the worst about strangers. Don't be so eager to see someone hang just because it makes you feel like justice is being served." A woman near the front of the crowd spoke up. "What will you do now, Miss Vasquez? Will you stay in Millbrook?" Elena looked at Marcus, who was standing beside her with his hand on her arm. "I don't know," she said honestly. "That depends on whether Millbrook is the kind of place where a woman and a man can build a life together, despite everything that's happened." An older man that Elena recognized as the town blacksmith stepped forward. "Miss Vasquez, I don't know if Millbrook deserves you and Mr. Wilder, but I hope you'll give us a chance to prove we can be better than we showed today." Other voices joined in, offering apologies, expressing shame at how quickly they had accepted Marcus's guilt, thanking Elena for her courage in speaking the truth. Marcus squeezed Elena's hand and leaned close to her ear. "What do you think? Should we give them a chance?" Elena looked out over the crowd of faces, people who had come to watch a man die, and instead had learned something about justice, truth, and the courage it takes to stand up for what's right. "Maybe," she whispered back, "but I think we've earned the right to take our time deciding." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile Elena had seen from him since his arrest. "I think we've earned a lot of things." As Sheriff Morrison led Carter Williams away in shackles, the crowd began to disperse. But many people lingered, as if they were reluctant to leave the scene of such a dramatic reversal of fortune. Elena and Marcus climbed down from the gallows platform together, their hands still intertwined. As they walked toward the jailhouse to collect Marcus's belongings, Elena realized that her plan had worked better than she had dared to hope. She had saved Marcus's life, exposed Carter Williams as the real killer, and shown the people of Millbrook what could happen when they rushed to judgment. But more than that, she had found something she hadn't expected to find when she came to this dusty little town seeking justice for her brother. She had found love, real and true and tested by the worst circumstances imaginable. and she had found it with a man who had faced death with dignity and courage, who had worried more about her safety than his own fate. As they reached the jailhouse, Marcus stopped and turned to face her. "Elena, I need to ask you something." "What?" "When you climbed up on that gallows platform, when you put yourself between Carter's gun and me, why did you do it? You could have been killed." Elena smiled and reached up to touch his face. "Because some things are worth dying for, and you, Marcus Wilder, are definitely one of those things." Marcus pulled her close and kissed her again, gentler this time, but no less passionate. Around them, the people of Millbrook continued to go about their business, but the silence that had swept the streets during their first kiss lingered in the air like a promise of better things to come. 3 months after the day that should have been Marcus Wilder's execution, the town of Millbrook was still talking about what people had started calling the Day of Truth. The gallows platform had been torn down the very next morning, and Mayor Thornton had announced that public executions would no longer be held in the town square. Elena sat at her sewing machine in the bright front room of the house she now shared with Marcus, working on a wedding dress for Sarah Mitchell, the banker's daughter. Through the large window, she could see Marcus in their small garden, building raised beds for the vegetables they planned to plant come spring. It had taken time for the town to fully accept what had happened that October day. Some people had been quick to apologize and welcome Marcus as a hero who had endured a terrible injustice with grace. Others had been slower to change their opinions, suspicious of both Marcus and Elena for reasons they couldn't quite articulate. But gradually, as the full extent of Sam Hartwell's crimes came to light, and as Carter Williams's trial revealed the depth of his deception, public opinion had shifted entirely. Marcus was no longer seen as a dangerous drifter who had gotten away with murder. Instead, he became a symbol of how quickly justice could go wrong and how important it was to question authority when something didn't feel right. Elena's seamstress business had flourished in the months since the near execution. Women from all over the county came to her not just for fine dresses, but to hear the story of the woman who had stood up to a corrupt deputy and saved an innocent man's life. Elena told the story reluctantly, always emphasizing that she had simply done what anyone should do when faced with injustice. But the truth was more complicated than the story people wanted to hear. Elena's investigation into Sam Hartwell's crimes had been dangerous and exhausting. She had spent weeks following leads, searching through records, and gradually piecing together the scope of the banker's theft. When she realized that Carter Williams was involved, she had been terrified. The night before Marcus's scheduled execution, Elena had indeed broken into Carter's house. But it hadn't been as simple as she'd made it sound in the town square. She had spent days watching Carter's routine, noting when he left for work and when he returned. She had learned which windows he left unlocked and which rooms he used most often. Finding the gold coins in Carter's safe had been luck as much as detective work. The safe had been hidden behind a painting in Carter's bedroom, and Elena had almost missed it entirely. But when she found Diego's coins along with dozens of others that clearly didn't belong to a deputy sheriff's salary, she knew she had found the proof she needed. The blood-stained letter opener had been in Carter's desk drawer, poorly hidden beneath some official papers. Elena suspected that Carter had kept it as some kind of trophy, the way some criminals kept mementos of their crimes. Getting Carter to confess publicly had been the most dangerous part of Elena's plan. She had counted on his desperation and guilt making him careless, and she had been right. But she had also been prepared to die that day if necessary. The thought of watching Marcus hang for Carter's crime was worse than the thought of her own death. A knock at the front door interrupted Elena's memories. She set aside her sewing and went to answer it, finding Sheriff Morrison standing on her front porch with his hat in his hands. "Good afternoon, Sheriff," Elena said. "Marcus is out back if you need to speak with him." Morrison shook his head. "Actually, Miss Vasquez, I came to talk to you." Elena invited him inside and offered him coffee, which he accepted gratefully. They sat at her kitchen table, and Elena waited for Morrison to explain his visit. "I wanted to let you know that Carter Williams was sentenced yesterday," Morrison said finally. 20 years in the territorial prison for murder, theft, and conspiracy. Judge Hamilton said it would have been life. But Carter's cooperation in helping us recover the stolen money worked in his favor. Elena nodded. "I'm glad the families will get their money back." "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. The recovery fund has returned almost $30,000 to Hartwell's victims. Your brother's account has been fully restored with interest." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. The money wouldn't bring Diego back, but knowing that his savings had been returned somehow made his death feel less meaningless. "There's more," Morrison continued. "The fund has a surplus of about $5,000. Money that Carter stole, but we haven't been able to connect to specific victims. The town council wants to give that money to you as compensation for your efforts in exposing the truth." Elena was quiet for a long moment. $5,000 was a fortune, enough to buy a house, start a business, or live comfortably for several years. "I don't want compensation," she said finally. "I didn't do what I did for money." Morrison leaned forward. "Miss Vasquez, you saved an innocent man's life and exposed a criminal conspiracy that had been going on for years. The least this town can do is show its gratitude in a meaningful way." "If the town wants to show gratitude, use that money to help other people. Start a fund for people who can't afford medical care, like Diego, or build a school, or fix the roads. But don't give it to me." Morrison studied her face. "You're sure about this?" "I'm sure." After Morrison left, Elena went outside to find Marcus. He was kneeling beside a half-finished raised bed, measuring boards for the sides. His sleeves were rolled up and there was sawdust in his dark hair. "How did it go with Morrison?" Marcus asked, not looking up from his work. "Carter got 20 years, and the town wants to give us $5,000 from the recovery fund." Marcus looked up at that. "5,000? What did you tell them?" "I told them to use it to help other people." Marcus stood up and brushed the sawdust off his hands. "You know, most people would have taken the money." Elena moved closer to him. "We don't need their money. We have everything we need right here." Marcus smiled and pulled her into his arms. "Speaking of which, Mrs. Patterson stopped by earlier. She wanted to know if we'd set a date yet." Elena and Marcus had been talking about marriage for weeks, but they hadn't made any definite plans. Part of the delay was practical. They wanted to make sure Marcus was fully cleared of all charges and that their life in Millbrook was stable. But part of it was emotional, too. Both of them were still processing everything that had happened, still learning how to live without the constant fear that had dominated their lives for so long. "What did you tell her?" Elena asked. "I told her we'd let her know when we decided." Marcus paused. "But I've been thinking, Elena, what if we don't wait? What if we get married next month?" Elena looked up at him in surprise. "Next month? That's awfully soon." "Is it? We've been through more together in 3 months than most couples experience in a lifetime. We know we want to spend our lives together. Why wait?" Elena considered this. There was wisdom in Marcus's words. They had already proven their commitment to each other in the most dramatic way possible. A formal ceremony would simply make official what everyone in town already knew, that Elena Vasquez and Marcus Wilder belonged together. "All right," she said. "Let's get married next month. But I want a real wedding, not just a quick ceremony at the courthouse." Marcus grinned. "Whatever you want. We'll invite the whole town if that's what makes you happy." As they stood in their garden discussing wedding plans, neither Elena nor Marcus noticed the figure watching them from across the street. William Hartwell, Sam's younger brother, had arrived in Millbrook that morning on the stage from Denver. He had come to settle his brother's affairs and to find out exactly what had happened in the months since Sam's death. William had received conflicting reports about his brother's reputation. Some letters described Sam as a respected businessman who had been murdered by a drifter. Others hinted at financial irregularities and suggested that Sam's death was connected to criminal activity. Now, watching Elena and Marcus in their domestic happiness, William felt a surge of anger. His brother was dead, and these two people seemed to be profiting from that death. William didn't know the full story yet, but he intended to find out. That evening, Elena and Marcus attended the weekly town meeting at the community hall. These gatherings had become much more lively since Carter Williams' arrest, as people felt free to voice opinions and concerns that they had previously kept to themselves. Tonight's main topic was the selection of a new deputy sheriff to replace Carter. Several men had applied for the position, including two from other towns who had heard about the job through territorial law enforcement networks. Elena and Marcus sat near the back of the hall, listening as Sheriff Morrison described each candidate's qualifications. They were discussing the merits of hiring someone from outside the county when a stranger entered the hall. The man was tall and well-dressed, wearing an expensive suit and a gold watch chain. His hair was neatly trimmed, and his mustache was waxed to sharp points. He looked around the room with calculating eyes before approaching Sheriff Morrison. "Sheriff, I'm William Hartwell," the stranger said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sam Hartwell was my brother." A hush fell over the room. Morrison stood up and shook William's hand. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm sorry for your loss. We weren't expecting you." "I've come to learn the truth about my brother's death," William said, "and to see justice done." Elena felt Marcus tense beside her. They both knew that William Hartwell's arrival could complicate their newly peaceful life in Millbrook. Mayor Thornton stepped forward. "Mr. Hartwell, perhaps we could discuss this matter privately. This is a public meeting and—" "No," William interrupted. "I want to hear from the people of this town. I want to know how a respected banker came to be murdered and how his killer was allowed to walk free." Murmurs arose throughout the hall. Elena could see people turning to look at her and Marcus, their faces uncertain. Dr. Patterson stood up from his seat near the front. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm afraid you've been misinformed. Your brother's killer wasn't allowed to walk free. Carter Williams was sentenced to 20 years in prison just yesterday." William's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Carter Williams? The deputy? I was told that a drifter named Marcus Wilder killed my brother." Sheriff Morrison stepped forward. "Mr. Hartwell, perhaps you should sit down. There's a lot you need to understand about what really happened here." For the next hour, the people of Millbrook told William Hartwell the truth about his brother's crimes and Carter Williams's murder. They described Elena's investigation, Marcus's near execution, and the dramatic confrontation that had exposed the real killer. William listened in stunned silence as the story unfolded. When they finished, he sat quietly for several minutes, processing what he had learned. "You're telling me that my brother was a thief," William said finally. "That he stole money from his depositors and let people suffer and die because they couldn't afford medical care." "I'm afraid so," Sheriff Morrison said gently. "We have extensive documentation of his crimes." William looked across the room at Elena. "And you, Miss Vasquez, your brother was one of Sam's victims?" Elena stood up slowly. "Yes. Diego died because he couldn't afford heart medicine after your brother stole his savings." William was quiet for another long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with shame. "I've spent the last 3 months planning to come here and demand justice for Sam's murder. I thought he was an innocent victim." "Your brother wasn't entirely evil," Elena said softly. "According to Diego's journal, Sam was planning to confess his crimes and make restitution. He was trying to do the right thing when Carter Williams killed him." William nodded slowly. "That sounds like Sam. He always had a conscience, even when he ignored it." William stood up and faced the room. I owe all of you an apology. I came here angry and accusatory, ready to blame innocent people for my brother's death. Instead, I've learned that my family owes this community a tremendous debt. Mayor Thornton started to protest, but William held up his hand. Please let me finish. Sam stole from you, and his crimes nearly resulted in the execution of an innocent man. The Hartwell name has been dishonored, and I intend to do everything in my power to make amends. William reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather portfolio. I've brought my brother's will and his business records from Denver. Sam left his entire estate to me, including his half-ownership in a silver mine in Colorado. The mine has been quite profitable in recent years. William opened the portfolio and pulled out a bank draft. This draft is for $50,000. I want to donate it to the town of Millbrook to be used for whatever purposes you see fit, perhaps a hospital, or a school, or aid for families in need. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. $50,000 was more money than most of the people in that hall had ever seen. Elena felt tears in her eyes. William Hartwell's gesture wouldn't bring Diego back, but it would help ensure that other families wouldn't suffer the way hers had. Marcus squeezed her hand. Are you all right? He whispered. Elena nodded. I think so. I think maybe Diego would be proud of what came out of his death. After the town meeting ended, Elena and Marcus walked home under a sky full of stars. The air was crisp and clean, with the promise of winter on the wind. Can you believe how much has changed since that day on the gallows? Marcus asked. Elena considered the question. 3 months ago, she had been a grieving sister seeking justice for her brother's death. Marcus had been a condemned man facing execution for a crime he didn't commit. Their future together had seemed impossible. Now they were planning a wedding, building a life together, and had become respected members of a community that had initially rejected them both. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't found the courage to speak up that day, Elena said. If I had let fear stop me from acting. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. But you did speak up. You risked everything to save my life, and in doing so, you saved this whole town from living with the guilt of executing an innocent man. Elena smiled. We saved each other, Marcus, and maybe we saved Millbrook too. As they reached their front porch, Marcus pulled Elena into his arms one more time. I love you, Elena Vasquez, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life showing you just how grateful I am that you're the kind of woman who refuses to let injustice stand. Elena kissed him softly. I love you too, Marcus Wilder, and I can't wait to see what our future holds. Inside their house, Elena lit the oil lamps while Marcus banked the fire in the kitchen stove. It was a simple domestic routine, but it felt precious to both of them. For people who had come so close to losing everything, the ordinary moments of their life together seemed miraculous. As Elena prepared for bed, she looked out the window at the town square where Marcus had almost died. The gallows platform was gone, but she could still see the spot where it had stood. In its place, the town council was planning to build a small park with benches and flowers, a place for families to gather and children to play. Elena thought about the kiss that had made silence sweep the streets of Millbrook. Not just the kiss itself, but everything it represented. Love triumphing over hate. Truth conquering deception, and courage overcoming fear. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as every day did. There would be crops to plant, dresses to sew, and a community to serve. There would be a wedding to plan and a future to build. But tonight, Elena was content to simply be grateful for the life she had found in this dusty little town, with the man who had taught her that sometimes the greatest courage comes not from facing death, but from choosing to keep living and loving despite everything the world throws at you. As she drifted off to sleep in Marcus's arms, Elena smiled at the thought that Diego would have liked Marcus very much. Her brother had always believed that good things could come from even the darkest circumstances if people were brave enough to fight for them. In the morning, the streets of Millbrook would once again fill with the sounds of daily life. Horses and wagons, children playing, merchants calling out their wares. But the silence that had swept those streets on the day of truth would always linger as a reminder of what was possible when people chose justice over convenience, love over fear, and truth over comfortable lies. And in the house at the end of Main Street, Elena and Marcus would continue to build their life together, one day at a time, proving that sometimes the best stories are the ones that begin with an ending and end with a beginning.